In this week's Memes and Machines, we wilded out, starting with TikTok battles, gifting rings, all the nefarious things that are happening in the creator community. We then dived into the topic of social media morality. Social media being banned for young people. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? And finally, we concluded with the missing ingredient of great advertising: context. What do we mean by that? And why is it the thing that is most overlooked?
I've got a pet peeve, right?
Here we go.
One.
This
Literary one. How many? How long we got?
I'm going to mute myself because I know there's going to be a rant.
every week. I think we're so fun, right? I go to a sauna area on a Sunday, right? It's at Soho House. I'm a Soho House member.
Wow,
Fucking
Mr. Hollywood.
shoot me if you want. And I go to the sauna area where there's no phones allowed. And I take my book. I go there. It's a place to chill, relax. My phone's in my locker. When I look around, how many people are on their phone? Everybody. People take it in the sauna. People are sat around me. And I'm thinking, is life such an emergency all the time that you can't put your phone in your locker for 5 minutes? It's like it's your dummy.
Sit back, grab a cold beverage from the fridge and relax, because you're now locked into the sounds of memes and machines.
Lads, it is good to see you both. How's things?
Doing well, you?
Yes, sir.
Good. It's starting to feel festive. December is the weirdest time of the year because we're all sprinting towards the end, but also people have this like inability to commit to things. So it's like, it is the strangest time of year, but I can't complain.
It's wind down for most people, but our clients like spend most of their budget in Christmas, so it's super busy.
It's good.
Usually busy. No rest for the wicked.
That's what they say, and no rest for memes and machines. Gents, I'm going to dive into it because I think we got some juicy stuff to talk on, and there's probably more we could unpick on each of these topics. But Ben, hit us this week. What you got for us?
Right, so I wanted to talk about kind of TikTok and the evolvement of I guess the monetization features on there. So TikTok launched live streaming about 3 or 4 years ago. Traditionally, was only the early adopters were Twitch streamers. I think most people felt uncomfortable going live. A year later or so, also launched TikTok Shop. Not really adopted by many people, but massive in China. And then what happened was people started live streaming, doing TikTok Shop videos, posting about how much money they were making. And then all of a sudden, people's eyes light up a bit. Maybe selling and doing TikTok Shop and live streaming isn't so bad anymore. You know, money does strange things to people. And, you know, TikTok know this. TikTok really pushing, I think, the buttons in turning their platform from what was traditionally a really nice organic feed of good random content that was funny, engaging, entertaining, education, to now half the feed is full of something that is making TikTok money. And a new addition to that, which has come around, I guess, in the last year, is this thing called TikTok Live Battling, where you have two live streamers that join together into one live stream. One person's on one side, one person on the other side, and there's this bar at the top. It's a blue and a pink bar. It starts in the middle. The battling lasts for 3 minutes, and the objective is to essentially push the other person's bar smaller. And the way that is achieved is through getting the people who are watching you, or quote unquote community, because not really a community, to donate through their gifting system. TikTok is heavily invested in building out a pretty decent gifting system, mimicking what Twitch has done, but at a lower cost for the end user. So you could gift things like roses. They cost a couple of p. It's their gifting system is much more accessible because most of the gifts are actually quite cheap. So you would upload, you would put £10 into your account, and then you can then buy the gifts through the TikTok currency. And I'm just not a huge fan of this gifting, the live stream battles, because These people don't make content. They're not content creators. They are just battlers. They are happy to call themselves battlers. There's now agencies that are being set up to train people on how to battle. They take a cut. It's this weird system now. And the same with TikTok Shop. There are also agencies now being set up. And it's just got me thinking about, like, on the contrary to brands who are very risk averse, don't like to do things that are going to damage their integrity and reputation, creators, just because they're just clueless, I almost think they don't know what they're getting themselves into, because these people gain no respect from anybody but the people within the ecosystem are doing it. Like, these people are just full of shit. They act like they're the most wholesome people in the world with their like fake ass community, but every 5 minutes they want to do a battle because they know battling makes them money. And I just think money does strange things to people. And coinciding with this, Hailey Welch, aka Hawk Tuah, aka Mrs. Fucking Useless, has rug pulled her audience. If you don't know what a rug pull is, she's created a meme coin. And basically, it was discovered that her team owned around 90% of it on launch. So loads of her fans put money into it, backing it. It's going to go to the moon, same shit, probably completely unaware of what pump and dumps are and the meme coin ecosystem. Most things just go up and then come down significantly. So they've all bought in. And as they've bought in, the holders, Hailey Welch and her team, have sold and have made millions. And it's all come out now that, this was a setup to be a rug pull. And again, goes back to this kind of idea of what influencers, creators online are doing for money. And they seem to just make bad decisions that potentially has short, medium, long-term impact on their brand, them as a person, the respect they gain. And it's just really interesting that it's so opposite to brands. Like, creators, they make so many bad decisions, and it's just interesting because everything just is all about money, unfortunately.
On the basis of money, how much does TikTok charge? For their like in-shop purchases? Is it like an
It's like
Amazon 20%?
Yeah, it's something like that. It's like 30-40% or
Yeah, that's
something.
Quite high.
wild. That's huge amount.
So and Chris, like, I think the top prize is a universe, and that's like £350.
Galaxy.
Yeah.
Is a galaxy, or there's this jet thing, and that's like a 100, 200. The big gifts go into the hundreds. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the thing I think about this, and it actually there's a macro point here about creators and the commercialization of attention. But when I think about this more sort of broadly, there's all these parallels on the internet, and everybody's playing different games. So there's a thing called gifting rings. So they use this idea of battles where, let's say we were in a gifting ring together. So me, Chris, Ben, we're all going to battle. I would send people in my team would send you money, and then you'd send, Ben money, and so on. So the money exchange then incentivizes the audience. And because you've got this kind of cult of people want their side to win, you're drawing on audiences to contribute. And it's this gamification that's actually really dangerous. And it's called gifting rings. It's like a scam. It's the same thing of like engagement pods. People are sharing attention, migrating audiences across others to grow, which you could argue is more innocent. But when this is like, I'm going to say impressionable people, a lot of them are really young. Like, they're spending their mom and dad's credit card, like gifting. A lot of these people, are probably from working class. Like, they really feel part of this thing and they want their side to win. And you are really exploiting them. And the Hawk Tuah girl is like the pinnacle of this. So I just watched the CoffeeZilla breakdown. And to cut a long story short, Hawk Tuah girl was paid $125,000 from a company to participate in creating her own crypto token. She would then get 50% of the transaction fees after expenses of the company. And the whole premise of the token was to take Web3 and crypto to people that haven't accessed it before. They tried to wrap up what is clearly a sinister motive, a rug pull, to exploit people, to go, oh, people that don't understand what they're buying, you got them to buy into something
Yep.
and you stole from them. So like there's this thing that I suppose permeates the internet and always has. I remember, and I'll put this from an empathetic position. It's easy to go, these are all scammers, these are all idiots. Why do people contribute? It's easy to be judgmental. But I remember going back to 2018, and I was heavily involved in influencer marketing. And that year at Cannes, the biggest debate that was going around ad circles was influencer fraud. Imagine influencer marketing is increasing as an industry. You've got more and more spend being put into the sector, and people using bots, manipulating engagement, buying fake followers. And the only thing I could say is that the empathetic position is most of the people in this industry were young. They were impressionable. You could argue, though, they don't know better. And it's not to say you justify the action of scamming people, but it's just very naive. And you're seeing this now play out in TikTok. And like, I've seen some of these people and these creators, and to your point, man, they're not creators. It's a circus.
Yeah.
People contribute. I saw someone like, not like taking drugs, but you're thinking like really in a council house, raving for 4 hours. And then there's this other person that's like eating takeaways. It really is this weird circus. And this is not to, people will do what they do, but I just go,
I feel really sorry
feel
for them
bad.
too, because I'll tell you why. Like, I've been in marketing long enough now for 15 plus years, right? To see the erosion of trust in brands and this new layer of trust in people. And these people become corporate shills for the brands because it's essentially still brands that want to reach the audience. But the new way to do it is through these online people that have made themselves, attract an audience. Now, imagine that you were a brand and you had all the people working in a brand making decisions on whether or not this is a good thing for the brand. You'll come up to a very different decision to a 19-year-old that's just got famous through a thing that they've never heard of before called TikTok. That's a completely different, like, mental thing to overcome. So I understand how now that people are more famous than brands, there is this idea of everyone needing PR help, that everyone needs like a bit of training on how to deal with this, how to deal with the fame, and how to think long term. Because short term gets you into, oh, this crypto company just reached out and offered me $100,000 and I'll sell my likeness for a short term fame thing. And, that's me done on the internet and see you later. Hawk Tuah could have made millions over the next 10 years. Instead, she's just gone for a corporate shill. And now it's gone. She used a crypto scam. That's going to rug pull her. She's going to lose all of her credibility like she had any in the first place. What she got famous for wasn't exactly, holier than thou. So it's like that person to have gained trust into anyone buying her crypto scam is so crazy to me. But you said something earlier which really rang true to me, and this is what all good scammers do. They prey on the most vulnerable. Who's the most vulnerable in this case? The ones that have followed a new person that have never heard of crypto before, and they're going to get sold a project first time on crypto. They're the most vulnerable because they've never heard of the scams, the hundreds of scams that have happened in thousands, actually. CoffeeZilla has probably exposed thousands by now.
Yeah, the naivety, on both your points there is the big problem. And I think
young person, younger audience. That's the really dangerous part.
The thing is, when I look back to when I was that age, it wasn't as easy to make money online. You had to usually come up with a legitimate business, or there were lucrative pockets of the internet. Now, those lucrative pockets of the internet are pretty front and center, TikTok. And the problem that is like I said, people do strange things for money. And this, I also wrote down here, OF. Like OF falls into this as well.
Yeah, definitely.
OF is now something that you can make really ludicrous amounts of money for, but people are young people are making decisions about doing something, taking an opportunity that is going to potentially bring a lot of money back to them. But the downside is there's a huge risk on brand integrity, them as a person, long-term damage. And like I said, the young people we all make bad decisions, and you know, young people are not trained on PR. They're not trained on long-term thinking, and now all of these young people are exposing themselves in some way on the internet in some
Yeah.
shape or form, maybe to make a quick buck.
Yep.
And I just think, what are the long-term ramifications of that
Okay,
for
I've got
both
the most
individuals'
interesting
mindset?
segue. I forgot about this, and maybe this should be mine story entirely, right?
Yeah,
I lived in Australia for 8 years, and a lot of my friends still live there, and they told me that they've now banned social media for under 16-year-olds.
good.
And it wasn't even up for a vote. The government just decided, and it happened without any version of the public deciding whether this is okay. Now,
I think that's
there's
great.
also there's all sorts of interesting, because we've just talked about the immaturity of pre-16-year-olds making these decisions like OnlyFans or buying, credits in a voting thing in TikTok, and it's not even their money or whatever, Like, I understand that, but I also think that they're banning YouTube, man. Think how much education that we got off of YouTube. Like, I've learned more in my career off of YouTube than my master's degree, my undergraduate degree, any other thing that I've ever done through university. And I was a lecturer, you know? So I feel both that that's a good idea and a terrible idea at the same time, because
They can be,
YouTube shouldn't be a social media
well,
platform.
there can be two truths, right? You can go, on one hand, do you think there is a shadow, a dark shadow to social media for young people?
Mhm.
Absolutely, many of them.
Definitely.
Self-comparison, the pressure. A young forming mind is exposed to so much.
Yeah.
Difficult, very difficult. On the other hand, I will go, this is something that isn't maybe talked about enough. I grew up in a very low aspirational town where the heights of your imagination would take you to being a bricklayer. Not that
Yep.
there's anything wrong with that, but
Me too, mate. I was
no,
a tiny
it's
little village as well. Same.
yeah, it's the mindset. If you said to your careers teacher that you wanted to do something aspirational, they'd say be realistic. That was the sort of message. It's very much a low aspiration place, and there are towns all across Britain like this. The majority, I would say, is like this. And then what I think about is the internet is a lens into a world that you never knew existed. And you can go listen to someone that spent 30 years in business and built their dream, and they can tell you the roadmap and the path that they walked, and they can give you wisdom in a 60-second video that can transform your life. I go, wow, that is incredible if you think of it in that context. But with all things, there is a shadow. And that shadow is the unintended consequences. So do I think the net positive of banning social media for I think 16 is a bit old, but I think sub 14 for sure.
I think
I think
14
should
is
ban.
more realistic too,
I think-
actually. I think, the thing that is the unintended consequence here, though, and this is where I started to really realize how the Aussies think as the older generations, right? How do you prove that you're over 16? Biometric data. So now every phone will scan every face in order to prove that you're over 16. So that means all over 16s also get monitored through the same system, because the only way to prove is to have biometric data. So now everybody has to live under this
Huh?
like government, like
That's impossible, Chris, because you would never pass for 40. You look about 17.
that's the
Oh.
thing is, I wonder if people who are 17 who look older and younger will get away. This AI might be not fallible. It might be infallible. It might have total misuse, and it's going to be a first of its kind in the world, though. Australia, a first world country, not some, like military regime or
Wait,
something.
when does this happen? Is this happen?
It's just happened, yeah. My
I-
friend texted me about it this morning as
Oh,
well.
really?
Yeah.
Half of my YouTube feed is like red pill,
Crazy.
conservative.
Oh, this is like this
politics.
week.
This is
Shit.
So
breaking
they-
news, yeah.
Oh, wow.
They would argue that Australia is very much authoritarian,
Very
like
conservative.
Australian. They're very like what they did in COVID. Shut down the entire country and said you
That's
can't.
what I
see-
mean. It's just
Oh.
like it's authoritarian in some ways, I guess you could call it. Like everything was crazy. They shut down the borders. That was the craziest thing. You couldn't
Yeah.
travel from Melbourne to Sydney, and you
Mm.
couldn't do, like, a lot of my friends there said they were worried about the government's basically, you know, everyone experienced this, businesses closes down, but Australians experienced it on a scale where the government gave them a lot less choice. It was almost closer to China, you know, and the Chinese were literally sealing people's doors closed. So
It says it says YouTube is not being banned here.
oh, really?
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
That was part of the debate. Is YouTube
Right.
part of
It
this
says
social media?
Australia government has said the social media ban will apply to Facebook, Snapchat, Reddit, Instagram, and X. Certain
Wow.
chat-based social media, including Messenger Kits, WhatsApp, Kids Helpline, Google Classroom, and YouTube will not be banned. There's no TikTok included in that.
Do you know what, though? I heard the counter arguments from someone in the conservative media saying this will just encourage everyone to go to a lot less safe versions of social media.
And you
or
can
use
VPN,
VPN.
and also you can't govern it today. Like you can VPN. Like
Right.
I go it's similar to the TikTok ban. You
I
go.
think the argument should be for parents, though. Parents need to be the first line of defense, not the government. The
Well,
government
parents are just not doing a good enough job. I'm all for the ban. I'm definitely all for this ban. They should do that in this country
as well. I do
People,
understand.
what about missing out? Tough shit. People are accessing social media too young these days, and the world is going to be fucked. I don't know what, like the attention span. Or I would love to just be like a 14-year-old growing up today to just be able to just see like how it's so different than when I was there, when you know, you were lucky if you got a phone at 13, 14. And that was when, remember, you had Samsung, and then people had iPhones, you know, you didn't have apps, you know, anything. Like, and now everybody like is getting, you know, it's a given, you know, have you got a phone? Of course, I don't even know what age kids get phones at these days,
See,
but it's young and it's just bad because
I'm
kids.
so caught up on this one, Ben, because I've been to third world countries where their censorship of information is like so overbearing that actually it's almost a human right to give a child access to freedom of information via the internet. You know, like they are told everything that they are believing. They're indoctrinated into a system. And you're like, that kid needs to know that there's actually freedom of information in this world. And that should be
But they don't need social media for that, though.
No, they just need access to the internet.
That's fine. Yeah, internet access is fine. It's just social media because, like 99% of kids' use on their phone will be on social media, and it will be like it's just looking at stuff that is probably not.
It's definitely not the best distribution of news information to kids.
Yeah, that's why I'm just curious. I'm curious on how social media is impacting young people's mindset, understanding of the world, thoughts, opinions, woke.
100%. I go. Adults are ridiculous with social media. Like,
oh mate,
you know, they're silly. So you go.
Wait, can I just make a quick point actually on this topic?
Embarrassing.
I've got a pet peeve, right?
How many? How long we got, Jay? I'm
gonna mute myself because I know
it relates to this because every week I think we're so fucked. Right, I go to a sauna area on a Sunday. Right, it's and it's at Soho House. I'm a Soho House member.
Wow, Mr. Hollywood.
Shoot me if you want. And I go to the sauna area where there's no phones allowed. And I take my book. I go there. It's a place to chill, relax. My phone's in my locker. When I look around, how many fucking people are on their phone? Everybody. People take it in the sauna. People are sat around me. And I'm thinking, is life such an emergency all the time that you can't put your phone in your locker for 5 minutes? It's like it's your dummy. Like, I'm so ashamed by adults, all over 30, all like quite older. And I'm like, can you not just switch off? And that's a generation that didn't grow up with a phone. And I think, and this is how it relates to it. And I always think, what on earth is the generation below going to be like when they grow up to that age? Fucked. That's what.
Here's a question for you, though. Have you ever actually turned up to a restaurant or something? I go to restaurants quite a lot just on my own. And if I forget my phone, I just sit there.
Yeah.
20 minutes and I'm just looking and listening to other people's conversations because I'm on my own. You know, there's no one to talk to. There's no one to browse. So you just look through the menu and you just like, because everyone's looking down at their phones or chatting.
It's just...
You know, like, so it's, I don't know when that happened either because I I try to put my phone away sometimes and
Mm.
go and have time with my son. You know, I
Yeah.
purposely don't let him watch an iPad or a screen because I'm like, these kids are getting so addicted to these screens so early. And I know that he's going to be
Yes.
into tech because of what I do and stuff eventually. But I don't want him to be in there as a baby, you know, like, so it's really difficult because
I think though the two things can coexist. We can go, adults are not responsible with technology. We abuse it, we could become addicted. And then you go, who's accountable? Is it the technology platforms that make them so addictive? Is it the applications? Is it the manufacturers? Or should we take agency and have account? With children, it is different in the sense that we say children can't vote, they can't drink. There's a lot of things children cannot do because they're not, we as a society decide that we have to put parameters and safeguarding measures to avoid them making mistakes that they will later regret. And there becomes a point where we say 18, you can do whatever you want and you live by your mistakes. But children, we hold them to a different standard. So like I fundamentally believe that social media has a ton of positives for lots of young people. But I would argue you're probably right in the sense the net negative, certainly for the sort of pre-13, that age, you don't need it at that point. Do you need access to information? I think you should have filtered information at that age. Do you really need to know the perils and the darkness of the world at 13? Probably not. Like,
I'm gonna make an interesting argument
Why?
here. Like, I'm old enough to have worked in like
You sure are.
pre MySpace Friendster. You know, Friendster was the
here he
social
goes.
media.
Back in my day, this guy, Silk
No,
Road
seriously.
Chris.
I'm gonna sort of I'm
Back
gonna
in my
rip
day.
off the Patreon CEO who did a really good speech at South by Southwest. So that's the B-Rail J.
Jack Conte.
Yes.
I love him. He's a great speaker. isn't he? Yeah.
Amazing talk at South by Southwest. By the way, I just applied for the London version because that's coming up in the next couple of months. So big news. But he said the death of the follower was the death of social media. And I completely agree with him because now think about it. If you've got a malformed brain, like you're not fully mature yet, you're pre-16, and you're being fed an algorithmic echo chamber of what you believe, and it's not even something you followed, it's just being what the algorithm suggests to you, and that's going to start forming, patterns that are not now. When you followed exactly who you wanted to, and you made that choice, and the algorithm only suggested to you the content of the people you followed, that's very different. You're being shown all sides of information. You're choosing a path, but it's also showing you the other side of the path. Now, the echo chamber version of the algorithm, which is what social media has graduated to, is way more dangerous for premature 16-year-olds, in my opinion, than the original version of social media, which was follow who you want, get notifications, very basic, not so algorithmically approached to
The
suggesting content,
recommendation
recommending.
engine.
Yeah,
is
like X right
dangerous.
now is a mess.
Okay,
If
well,
you log into X, it's just just
maybe.
death and suicide and tragedy
Well,
and
yeah, but like maybe there is a nuanced answer. Whereas if you're under 16, maybe we don't say there's a full ban, but you can't. Maybe you pass legislation that they can't be served the recommendation engine. It has to be like
right.
intentional, or it's parent
A
gated,
different
or
version of YouTube
yeah,
or anything else is
yeah,
what I
yeah.
thought too.
YouTube's already different, but like, yeah,
100%.
I think a different version of the app's a good thing.
But then that's what China already does, isn't it? China's
Oh, there
TikTok
we go.
is
China's got it
education
right. Good for
and
them.
stuff like that. And it even logs you out, apparently. After a certain amount of scrolling, it shuts down the app.
They ain't shutting down
I
Silk
need
Road
to
Press.
find. There's
And then
this.
everyone will argue that's authoritarian and we live in a free will society.
You can't win.
Like, it's just you can't win because if it's a democracy, everyone's trying to get their voices heard. And then where does this stand from the social media point of view? Like, these companies will always suggest this content this way now because it makes them more money. They are incentivized by how much they get, and then they're not thinking about the mental health of the kids. So then governments are a middle ground to force them into thinking about the mental health of the kids. But then they all have to, that's the only way that it's not going to become a runaway. Like TikTok was the most dopamine algorithm I've ever seen. You open the app, you're in a video. You scroll up, you're in another video. It continues that way. There's no other social media of any time that's not had a user interface where you can see multiple options. You're just immersed in a video. Like, that's the ultimate thing that kids can't stop this doom scrolling because it's into the content. As soon as you open the app, you're into the content. And then it's the next one. And then it's the next one. You know, and then now you feed in live in
Like-
between these things, and that becomes a whole new universe. You're
Yeah.
like just scrolling into live and TikToks and then spending money that's not yours and making upvotes on other people's stuff. And all of this was gamified via the open the app and you are in a video. All of
It's-
that was unlocked because of that.
I used to have a picture on the wall that was like, it basically took the old tobacco smoking bans and just put like put social media icons in it.
Oh,
And it was like
totally.
in the water. We were a social media agency, and the idea is
I would
that
argue
it's
social
addictive.
media is a lot more addictive than gambling. A lot more. Maybe on a factor of 10 to 20 times more addictive than gambling.
Accessible, probably similar. I imagine there's a very similar neurological sort of.
I need to
response.
I need to find a video. Like I was about to say, when Oliver, you just said about the smoking. There's this video that our creator did. It's brilliant. It's like someone's outside and they're on their phone, like, and then there's this person that's walking past, like pretending to be like cold turkey, and this guy's like almost like he's pretending. It's done in a way that it's like this person is smoking, but they're just actually on their phone. He's like, can I can I have one? And then he gives him his phone, and he just scrolls and he goes, oh. And he gives it him back. It's brilliant. It's fucking brilliant. It's just like, oh my god! Like,
I've
imagine
seen
if
another one of those.
get to
where
the world like that.
someone is walking around the Louvre in Paris, and they're looking at the Mona Lisa, and every single person is looking down at their phone, even though the most famous piece of art in the world is right in front of them.
Hmm.
Every single person is looking at their phone, and there's like 100 people captured in this foyer right in front of the most famous art of all time.
Well, that's actually become elite content now, because they had the same when I think it was LeBron James had done some kind of historic feat, and like everybody's on their phone waiting for a record to be
Right.
broken because they knew it was about to happen. And then you've got Phil Shoe Dog, Nike founder.
Oh yeah, Shoe Dog, Shoe Dog
What's he
millionaire.
called? Phil Knight. Phil.
Yeah, Phil Knight. Yeah,
Phil Knight.
Phil
Knight
Knight. He's
founder, yeah.
sat in the front row, and he's the only person without
Paying
a phone
attention.
out, just watching the moment.
Old
And it
school.
was poetic. It's beautiful because to Ben's point in the sauna, like.
Well,
we're
as a
so
former
addicted.
DJ, mate, I remember the days when no one had phones at gigs, and now everyone's holding up phones at gigs, and it ruins the whole experience for me, to be honest.
So does this beg of a question? Are we changing the name Memes and Machines because we're now turning into hippies and
Anti-tech.
reject our entire professions, industries, all of those things?
No, it's just when it becomes like
get
so
it.
overdone, like that's the thing is Ibiza at one point used to be a really cool place that not many people knew about. It was a party island that was emerging, and now it's like corporatized. It's 15 euros for a beer, like it's 150 euros for a ticket to anything. You can't get a taxi to save your life. Like the whole place has just become overrun because of a trend that continued to get popular, and now
So-
it's like overdone.
So could you argue, and we see this in like brands being unhinged and we Hawk Tour's notoriety, have we hit peak chaos in social media? Like,
I
because
mean-
now it's getting a weird circus. Like,
Well,
are we
I
at
thought,
peak?
honestly, this is a good one for Ben, right? When people like the biggest YouTubers of all time, like KSI and Logan Paul, get wrapped up in a crypto scam, is that not big enough to break the news to everyone? Like no one bigger could be behind one of these crypto scams. CoffeeZilla's exposed them multiple times,
Mm.
and yet there's still people falling for these crypto scams. Who are these people?
Yeah,
Like
it doesn't
it
ever
must
make
be the
mainstream
most
news.
vulnerable
They're not-
newbie young people on
They're
these.
not. They're not the most vulnerable. They just think they're in. They're trying to exploit the other person. It's a
How,
casino.
with all these
'Cause they're-
stories, can you still think that the Hawk Tour
Because you
kids.
have
person?
but you have survivorship by people. Like, look, when you have internet culture, which is satirical and a joke, right? It's the reason that Doge is worth however many hundreds of billions, if not trillions of market cap. I don't even know the numbers, but you take an internet meme, you build community around it, you put a financial incentive at the center of that. They hear stories of some person like them across the other side of the world that has turned $100 into $1 million, And that's what they try and pursue. It's
But they got
addictive.
to know that that's the 1 in a million story. Like, that is the only time that is ever
Well,
gonna
people,
happen.
it's the falsehood of social media more broadly. People
I
only
guess
share
so.
their wins. When I say, generally speaking, you have extremes. Like, it was funny when there's a crypto bull market, all my crypto chats are popping. Everybody's a
Of
genius.
course.
Everybody's making smart decisions. When it was a bear market, no one spoke. They were deadly silent. So
Of
you
course.
only have, to a young impressionable person, you go, well, I only hear about winners and I have every unqualified person telling me the perfect secret to get rich. And I get the pull and the attraction of that when you don't know better. And even if you do know better, people still you still fall victim to greed and all these, natural, very parts of the human
I
consciousness.
will give
So,
X quite a lot of credit that their verification system is brilliant. You know, when people verify information as being
the
false,
community notes.
yes, the community
Yeah,
notes.
it's
I
good
think
verification.
all social media needs that. Because imagine that, if you caught a scam in live TikTok early enough, someone could highlight it as a scam, and
Yeah,
then
it's
someone
good.
could prove it's a scam, and it stops proliferating to get millions of people to get into it. Like,
Yeah, there's a few. So there's like I'll give an example. There's
needs to be more mods.
more like there's live streams where people are like building like decks of like cards, like, or they're like doing something, and it's like it's a pre-record, and it's people, and they're encouraging people to gift. They're encouraging people to gift, and if people gift a certain thing, they'll knock down. They're doing something to reach a goal. And their objective is to get people to gift the top gift so that they basically ruin the thing that they're doing to achieve the goal, to start again, and they are pretending like they actually give a shit. Like there's this one guy that does it all the time. He like cries. He's pretending to cry. He's a little bastard. He's like pretending to cry, and basically he's taking advantage of people that just don't know. Like and
Wow.
if you read the comments, people are like, this is fake, it's pre-recorded. But all he does is just has this pre-recorded 2-hour live stream and him building this card into one of those pyramids, and it gets to like this point where he's near the top, and he always is like, don't send a galaxy, don't send a galaxy, don't send a galaxy, please don't send a galaxy, I have to start again. And then he just keeps, and then
That's such bait.
somebody sends a galaxy eventually, and then
That is such
and
bait.
it's just such a shame to see. There's just
How
nothing.
can they get away with the pre-recorded though?
I don't.
Because
They
how do they
do. There's just
know
no. Sometimes I sit there and think, is there anything good
what?
happening in the world?
Well, lads, I'm gonna have to pull us out of this dark. Oh, I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna hit you with my segment of the week, which is a lot more optimistic.
I
This
hope
is
so.
not. This is not a. This is not a subtle transition. This is like a pick up and move the conversation in a completely different direction. So my theme, I wrote down ad placements and context. So whenever you think about advertising and creative, there's a lot of effort put into the idea, the creative itself, and there's a lot of effort put into the distribution, whether that's paid media. How are people going to see this creative? I would argue not enough people put enough effort into the distribution, but let's park that for a second. There is a third paradigm that is what I consider the biggest missing piece and multiplier of great advertising. It's placement / context. And I'm going to bring this to life for both of you. Think of your favorite out-of-home advertising or a billboard. And whenever I am asked that question, I have one very specific example. And it's an old example, and it's my favorite ever billboard. And I'll tell you the copy and what the billboard was and the creative first. Then you'll go, oh, that's not anything particularly good. And then if I tell you the context, then you go, that's genius. So there was a billboard, and it said on the side of a building, it said, if you lived here, you'd be home right now. And you go, okay, what's good about that? Is that great? If you lived here, you'd be home by now. If I told you that billboard was placed on a building outside of London's most congested area for commuters, where people are in the mindset they would sit outside that billboard for 30 minutes, frustrated, sat in traffic, in a morning, in an evening, over and over again, you understand the mindset, you understand the context, and that placement is genius. There didn't have to be amazing visuals because it spoke to an individual at a specific time in a specific mindset. And what made that a great ad? Simply context. So for
Insight,
me,
I would argue. The insight gathered in the research that's exactly the placement where you could reach the most commuters of the interest in that, travel line, because that is all insights gathered within the campaign.
yeah, well, like you could argue insight underpins everything.
Yeah,
Insight on
yeah, yeah.
media planning, insight on what drives a good idea. But
Exactly.
my overriding point is
Context.
context is seldomly thought about in the creative process. People think
Well,
about
it's
where it may
skipped
live.
over, yeah, because
People think about where it may live. People think about the idea itself. They don't think of the context. And for me, a good ad only becomes great if it's contextually relevant.
Mm.
And like I've seen so many like interesting sort of placements, and I'll try and reverse engineer how can you do the most effective advertising in those placements. And I'll give you a few. So when I was in the US, there was a company called Napkin Ads. And basically, they would place around bars advertising on napkins. And if you know the context of a city like New York, you sit down at a bar, they put a water, they put a napkin in front of you. You have a captive audience. If it's in a bar that sells alcohol, you may have a certain mindset. So you can start to see how that context means you could do really clever, thoughtful advertising. There was another one that I loved. It was called The World's Smallest Billboard. And it was basically someone that put ads inside Chinese fortune cookies in Chinese restaurants across the US.
Wow.
And you go, okay, that's kind of the end of the meal, the context, the placement. I love the framing of The World's Smallest Billboard. I thought that was sort of really cool. But you can extrapolate this a million times from, think of urinals. You know, you go to a service station and there's the adverts in the urinal. They're usually really effective because you're in A, you're captive, but B, you're in a certain mindset. There are so many others, like if you think of dating app placements, you're in a specific mindset again. How can you use mindset? How can, to your point, Chris, how can you use an insight? But for me, that's the single greatest missed opportunity in advertising. And it's barely ever talked about, by the way.
I agree. And I would say that it's the brand's fault. In my perspective, most of the time, when a brand reaches out, they're looking for a research agency, an advertising agency, and a distribution agency. And often they're 3 different agencies. Now, that's where they've made mistake number 1, because the insights may not translate to the advertising, and that may not translate to the distribution. So, like, if you think about it, like, you really do need to do them all under one roof in order to get the best possible insights, to get the right ad in the right distribution point. So it's a difficult one because agencies are specialized now. There are specific agencies that will make your ad, but they're not going to be putting it on Clear Channel billboards all throughout the UK. They're not the out-of-home media
Well,
advertising buying agencies.
Doesn't this beg the question then that, like, should agencies have a very specific role, but if you're looking for them to solve all your problems, they're not going to, because structurally they're
No,
flawed, right? Like,
exactly.
one will
I,
give you the good idea.
I'll tell you something. I used to work at an agency that's wanted to sell one type of advertising, so they always advise that. They, even though that wasn't the best thing for the insights for the campaign, they would always advise that because that was the most profitable one to them. And that's what brands don't understand is agencies are incentivized to offer their most, like lucrative package instead of actually what's best for the brand.
Yeah, I think that's starting to, like, that was very much in media buying and like value pots and trade arrangements and programmatic. Like
Everyone will tell you that. Like, if you talk to an agency and they specialize in SEO, they'll tell you SEO is the way to go. If you specialize in PPC,
Yeah.
they'll say PPC is the way to go. And they'll both argue their case in the RFP to the brand. And the brand makes a decision, ultimately, not knowing that these agencies are incentivized to go one way or another.
Yeah, it's interesting because, like, I've had someone, I've been thinking about new businesses, and there was one of our partners had suggested that the hardest thing, he's bought many marketing services, and the hardest thing is he doesn't know what he's buying. He's not a marketeer. He doesn't know the nuance. So he
Exactly.
has to take at face value, well, I want to be discoverable on the internet, so I should do SEO. That's the logic. Now, he doesn't know what good SEO is because the bar is only as high as you make it or you've experienced. You don't know what great is until you've been there or seen it or done it or been part of it. So part of me goes, he said, wouldn't it be great if you could go to a place and they're pre-approved and they're like amazing? And I said, the problem is ideologically that business of like, I could go to a marketplace and then I say my problem and it marries it up with 4 different services of pre-approved partners. You go, okay, in theory, that would be amazing and it'd be great for buyers and it'd be great for clients. However, there's a fatal flaw in that whole equation is marketing always depends. It's nuanced. And
Yeah.
I could build a case that SEO is the right answer. You could build a case that paid social is the right answer. And both of us also could be right, but one of us is probably right a little more.
I'll
Like,
give you a better in life analogy for people that don't understand. It's like turning out to a mechanics without knowing anything about cars. You're
yeah,
gonna
they
get
can say anything.
exactly the same, like, oh, the muffler costs £1,000 to replace. If you knew anything about cars, you'd know that that was a complete overshot at the pricing. And that's the thing is brands don't want to educate themselves on good SEO or advertising in order to tender better. They just want and what will they fall into then? The person who says you only need to spend $99 a month through SEO in order to make it work, and it will never work. But then they've the undercharged one, they don't understand what it is or how it works. So they just think that's a bargain and then they take it and then they get underwhelmed by the results. It's a terrible loop that all starts from not knowing what you're buying.
I would also say so. It's compounded by the idea that I think most of the industry isn't very good. If 80% of the industry isn't very good at marketing, it's a sad shame, really. Like I just
Is
don't think 80% do very mundane, bland,
they
Why do you
unfiltered.
think
certainly
that is?
claim they're a lot better than they are.
So I'll give you a view, and it may be an unpopular one, but I think the barrier to become a marketing professional is really low. You don't
Yeah, it
need a
is.
formal education. You can
I
just
studied
start.
marketing at uni. It was shit.
Yeah, I
Mm.
studied marketing at uni, and like I
It
got a
didn't
bit of
sound
value. My experience was okay. I got some value out of learning the 4 Ps and understanding a bit of behavioral science. Like to me, it was helpful. However, the barrier is very low in the sense that anyone can do it. Our world is very subjective.
yeah.
People can make claims about results that they had a seemingly very small participation in. So imagine like these famous campaigns, the ones that really move the needle, the moonshots for businesses. They're few and far between, and we kind of hold certain brands and for periods of time on a really high pedestal. The reality is there's a couple of people that have contributed for that, but the 400 people in that organization and the 300 people at that agency all take credit. The reality is it's one person probably coming up with really good ideas.
Yeah.
There's a couple of people doing really smart, seamless
Usually.
execution, but yet 500 people take credit. So
Yeah,
you go, it's
usually.
very difficult. So we've got a low bar to
Mm.
enter marketing. It's not like there's this rigorous process. The industry doesn't pay enough, so you can't keep the best talent. The
Yeah.
best talent typically stays in a marketing job for 5 years, then they leave, choose independence, do their own thing, fragment, go to a higher paying sort of sector, go in-house,
So
join
true.
technology
So many
companies.
variables is actually scary because the brand needed to allow that placement in the first place. The brand needed to go, yes, that agency idea was good because I know agencies that come up with great ideas that get rejected all the time. And then the actual campaign that gets put out is their B idea, which they didn't want to do, but the brand made them do that. And then they look terrible in their portfolio. And I feel so sorry for them because they had the good idea. It got rejected. And that meant that they now look bad.
Well,
They don't want to put it out, lots of them in the end. They
and the
just do it for the work.
But the interesting thing, mate, is it's still like, even in that example there, it's subjective. The graveyard of idea that should have worked may not work. That's the relative, right? So you go, that's
True.
the thing they would have been proud of. Like,
Right.
take the Jaguar debate going on now. Some people are saying it's the greatest sort of genius interaction in the world. Some people sit on the fence. Some people say it's the worst thing that ever happened. That's debate. And if the goal was to cause maximum attention, they won. They did well. If that was the goal, I don't believe it would have been, but let's reverse engineer. That's what marketeers do. We reverse engineer the story based on the outcomes. It's like our retrospect story of
Totally.
like, oh, that was a genius strategy when that unhinged like went viral on TikTok. It's like, probably wasn't that. It was probably just a
Again, though,
mini
if we're taking
experiment.
all the goals into account, like one thing to note about the Jaguar story, they're launching in 2026 as an EV company and they want to appeal to millennials and Gen Z. And their customers today have been baby boomers who buy petrol cars. So
But
if you think about it from the perspective of they've come out being controversial, they've raised a lot of attention on platforms they've never been found on before, like TikTok, and they've reached the audience that they intend to change to in 2 years' time as a
I
business.
don't think they've yeah, like
It's a
we
tough
we could
one to
debate
measure.
we could debate that all day. I just think that the most interesting, insightful take I saw on the Jaguar debate was someone who talked about color. They basically did the Jaguar campaign in gray. They showed the concept car. They showed like just a traditional color palette, and you looked at it and you went, "Oh, that's amazing!
That's
A
classy, yeah.
beautiful looking car. That's classy." And the fact that it was pink like made all the difference in the sense
But
that
that's
it
the goal. Like,
signaled
think of who they tried to reappeal to. So
uh,
gray would have been to the old baby boomer that liked the classic, and the pink was going to be to the youth of
well, the,
EV vehicles in 2
well,
years.
the argument you're right is the argument is they're appealing to maybe the more futuristic end of the wealthy Asian society. You look out to China and go, well, it's a car
Right.
built. It's very futuristic looking. Look, there's a million and one debates.
It's a
Like
tough one. Yeah,
what I can say is time will tell, right? Was it
exactly.
was it a disaster? Everybody's talking about Jaguar and they weren't before. I was quick to criticize because I just thought the ad was crap. Like I didn't personally like it. And someone called me out and went, "Well, you're not the audience." I went, "I absolutely am the audience.
Right.
I'm of the age bracket they want to appeal to. My next car is going to be an EV.
Yeah,
I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I can afford a car like that. I am actually the minority of people that is
exactly.
exactly that
Yeah.
audience.
If you're in the
But
test,
I love the car. I said this to my friends. I went, I actually really like the look of the car. I didn't care for the
Mm.
ads. I thought the ads were trash, but I actually really like the car. So I look at that and go, you know, it's product. Like overriding after all of that, like if the product's amazing, looks amazing,
I
does
think
what
you
it
said the right
says.
thing though. Like, let's see. This is something that was a 2-year trajectory from now. And
Yeah.
like I did a really interesting podcast where we had the CMO of Burger King on, and he talked about when he did the moldy Burger King. Can you remember
Oh yeah.
that? On he
I
put it
thought
all
that
on
was
the
I thought that was bad, and I'm a fan of that guy, the
I'm
CMO.
gonna tell you now, Fernando said the same thing. Everyone said on the day that it was released, "This is disgusting. Why are there moldy Burger Kings?" The goal was to make it people be aware that there's actually molds and McDonald's doesn't because it's got so many preservatives in it.
I know the stuff. Like I saw the award. Like I've seen a lot. Still, it was for me. It was a miss. Like it was award winning for controversy, but you don't do that. There's some barriers where the illusion is better. Like the
Right.
illusion exists for a reason. Like for me, that was a
If the
bad ad.
goal was to raise awareness about one particular thing, the goal was
The,
accomplished, and
for
that's what
me,
marketing is. It doesn't matter how you feel about it.
the
Was their
goal
goal
the goal should
accomplished or not?
always ladder up to selling more burgers, and for me, it didn't do. No, like that should ladder up. It doesn't mean in isolation it will sell more burgers,
Totally,
but
totally,
it should
totally.
ladder up to that goal. If it's not doing that, what's the point? The goal is to sell more stuff. Let's not kid ourselves about purpose.
And
The
this is
goal is always
why,
to
by
sell
the
more
way,
stuff.
full circle reference, this is why marketers aren't taking that seriously. Because we're arguing as pro marketers about subjectivity. And when you can't measure something quantifiably, it's very hard to understand, your opinion versus like everyone thinks they've got the best Spotify playlist on earth. Everyone I've ever talked to thinks their taste in music is the best. Everyone I know. No one says that their music is worse than someone else's. And yet, quantifiably, they're crap compared to the most people I know, but they don't think that way because their warped perspective is they know good marketing, they know good music, they
Well,
know
that
good
it,
art. Anything that's subjective, they
it
think
goes
they know it.
it goes back to the bar. There is a difference though, because I had this criticism when I kind of I only made like a laugh satire about their community management that were copy and pasted saying exuberant and all these wanky words.
Right.
And like I wasn't even making commentary. I didn't personally like the ad, but a lot of people said to me, "Oh, another expert," and I'm like, actually, bro, yes,
Yeah.
I kind of am. Like,
Actually,
15
you
years
are one of the person that can actually talk about this.
There's,
Everyone else in this thread is a complete muppet that doesn't know
I'm
anything.
like, of all the people I've worked with, I go, of all I don't like to brag, but I can give a very educated take on this.
Yeah, and that's where you just want to hold your teeth, because you could go on, oh, I manage Social Share, one of the biggest marketing agencies in the UK, and given that whole, and then what's the benefit of that? Everyone in that thread thinks they have the same perspective as you. And that's insane to battle against that,
That's
like
marketing. It's the
that is
why the social
marketing.
media. It's like
That is
why the
marketing.
social media professional. Like everyone has an opinion on the most visible medium. You've got CEOs that have never been on the internet telling
And
their
I've
social
always
teams
argued
how
in
to behave.
marketing, the most dangerous thing you can be is indifferent. So if no one gives you
Yes.
that extreme
Amen.
opinion, you are screwed. That's where you've really screwed up your marketing, because you want an emotional response, positive or negative. But if you get no emotional response, that's where you've really screwed up.
Yeah, particularly today, like I would argue there's an argument where just, advertising in the past, if you had a flash sale and there was no emotion and you didn't make anyone feel anything, and I expect your product to be £100 and you tell me it's 60, but it's only this weekend, that's effective. I will go act because I have some
But if you
awareness.
send that to me in the 200 plus emails I got for Black Friday this gone weekend, it's gone in the waste bin.
Well, that's the point. The context. Where we started this, the context was email is congested. If you know the context is I'm about to get 200 emails in a single day with a sale, the magic is how do I turn that email into a click? That's the magic. And this is where great marketing exists in the context. It's never about the message, because a 20% sale may be genius in the context of one environment. It may be irrelevant and redundant in another. And this is like my overriding point of people aren't thinking in those terms because that's nuanced. It requires depth. It requires insight. It requires knowledge. It's quite a high marketing bar. And if 80% of our industry is junior, haven't gone through the formal education, haven't learned, aren't practitioners, one of my main motivations for creating content is to try and be a better marketeer. The fact that I know algorithmic nuance and how to frame things is through doing.
Yeah.
But I also have theoretical knowledge of running businesses and understanding broader context. And if our pursuit is to be better at our craft, the industry can only do that if we raise the bar higher, we pay people more, or we create opportunities for people to earn better income, which requires, actually being very honest, a smaller industry. It means the industry has to get smaller and cream will rise to the top. And
that's the great thing about marketing is you're not in the race to the bottom. Because why Starbucks can sell a coffee over $9 versus, a generic brand can only sell the same coffee for $1 is because they're not in the price war. The brand marketing of Starbucks is so good that you don't actually care about the cost anymore. That's why marketing is genius. Because otherwise you have to be the
transcends
cheapest or the
function.
fastest or the best. And there's very few businesses that make that. There's 1% of businesses that can do that. Be the fastest or the best or the, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But everyone else has to rely on marketing.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous. And it's fascinating.
It
We've
is,
come
that's why
full
I love
circle. We've come full circle. Ben, do you want to give us some closing thoughts?
Creators are better marketers than marketeers.
Wow.
Creators are better marketers than marketeers. They will be in the future
I
because
agree.
creators get more opportunity and freedom to do. Marketeers have to spend all their time on one fucking campaign for a number of time, and then they move on to the next one and the next one. Creators
I
are
agree,
just
but I'll give you a
creating.
caveat to that, Ben. Like we said before, right? Creators are only better marketers once they create for someone else. Because a creator creating for themselves is a personal brand, and a marketer is actually someone that does it for someone else.
Yeah.
So that's the only caveat, is that like once a personal brand has, established that they can do this outside of their personal brand, they're a marketer. And like, I find the best marketers actually are musicians, myself included,
I'm gonna agree, Chris.
Most music people I know have had to market their own music, and then they're able to do this outside of their personal brand, because music is something totally different to their personality. So marketing music is something different from marketing yourself, and therefore you're a marketer. Like, that's a really good
But not
translation.
all creators market themselves. I don't
No,
market
of
myself.
course.
So I market tools. My TikTok
Well, you
feed
don't
is a
realize you're doing it, but every post you make is marketing
as
for
my
you.
precisely. This is my point precisely, and there are tons of creators like me that I'm creating
Right.
ads for brands on a weekly basis with no rules.
Well, one sponsorship with a brand is you becoming a marketer.
Yeah,
That is the
I know
personal
what
brand
works and know what
graduating
doesn't
to a
work.
marketer.
I've made
Yeah.
hundreds of videos, so
Yeah.
you
But
know.
how do you sell Shure microphones through your personal brand? That's marketing, because you're having to translate someone else's brand to being as useful as what your own content could do. And then that's the first step into being a marketer.
I
But
think
if
what
you have only ever grown a personal brand, by definition, you're not a marketer
Yeah,
yet.
and I'd say as well for your thing, Ben, is like you're a you're in pursuit of mastery of the context in which you storytell. You storytell a
Right.
lot in short form, and you've mastered the craft of translating a product or a service or a review to your audience where they are entertained, they get value. It was my favorite quote about like advertising. They said like a bad ad is just a bad ad, right? A good ad is content. Like, that's the point, right? That's the distinction you can make. And for something to be good, because it's subjective, what's good to me might not be good to Chris, is like the distribution, the relevance really matters. And like what you've done as a creator is you've honed the skills of storytelling, of being a marketeer through the lens, through a contextually relevant lens. You've maybe never thought of it in that sense, but that's fundamentally what you're a master of. If someone said to you, like, do advertising in a cinema, you haven't learned that skill yet. Like, do the best possible, like, advertising in a cinema. Doesn't mean you wouldn't be good at it, but it means you're not there yet. And, like, that's the context, and that's what makes
Half the
marketing.
cinema will be full with fucking people that scroll on TikTok all day. So you just make short form TikTok, mate. Easy, mate. All roads lead to short form brain rot, mate.
But
I
this is
don't-
why, Ben. This
I
is
don't
why.
disagree.
It's funny because Ollie's nailed it, right? You understand distribution on your platform, TikTok, and you're getting frustrated that brands don't give you the brief that allows you to make the content to know to go viral. They're holding back the distribution, like we talked about, full circle. If you don't allow the ad placement in the right place, if you don't allow the distribution in the right format, don't expect it to go well.
You know
Listen to
what?
creators
Yeah,
about
but
how they know
I think
what
you could
does well.
you could repurpose hook the short form creators master how to catch attention in 3 seconds, and I think creators can repurpose that skill into mastering how to capture attention on a billboard, in other forms
Right.
or in other
Totally.
forms of media.
I agree.
Because the goal of the 3-second hook is to make something interesting, entertaining, curiosity, want more, want to know
But what
more.
I meant is when
to
brands
buy.
approach you to go through TikTok, you know the distribution of TikTok and what it requires.
No, what
and
I'm-
the brand may stop you from doing what you know requires to go viral. And that's their lack of distribution knowledge, and they're holding it all back. That's the thing I see with brands all the time in social media, is lack of understanding of how distribution and organic works.
I don't think the interesting thing is everyone always says this, like brands stop people doing good work, like great work. And I think that's in part true. I would say a big onus is on the person with the idea. There is like me, if I come up with an idea that I love, you will hear.
No, I think it's
you
the
will-
brand being brave enough to accept
No,
the
it's not
idea.
brave.
I think
It's
the
not-
ideas come a lot
that's-
more than you think.
No. That's absolutely, in my view, wrong. Like, your job, if you have a great idea, is to convince people it's a great idea. And how
Fair
you do that is the skill. Don't blame the brand because they're doing shit ideas. Your job is to convince them to do the best ideas. Like that you have conviction, and you can do that through data. We've done this before, and here's the evidence, and here's the story arc, and here's the reason why. You can do that. You can go like, Ben, I do this on a weekly basis, and I have millions of views every single week because I know how to do this. That gives you authority. But you can't just complain that people haven't taken my idea. It's good. It's like, go prove it. Like, that's where the marketing industry gets it wrong. We blame brands too much.
I get that perspective as well. I think a lot of brands that we've tried to do these ideas with are more safe because of the massive size of them, and then they haven't had a big social media presence to know this is what does well. And if you work with brands that have made a big social media presence like Ryanair or Innocent Drinks, they totally know. They accept that this is what it takes.
They've been on that
to-
path.
Yeah.
They've been on that path. And the point
Exactly.
being is like, if you're the agency, the integrity of that is going like, this is what's going to work. I'm not going to do the thing that's not going to work. And like, I'd rather fail on what I believe to be the right thing than fail on your ideas. And I've said that to a client before, by the way.
That's the expression in marketing. We were doing expressions earlier. Dying on your own hilt is exactly what we used to
100%.
call that.
I remember
if you lay the sword, you die by the sword if it goes badly.
100%. I remember calling a client and it was the creative director kept interfering. I rang the CEO of the business and I said, I'm not working with your creative director. I will work with him, but he has to execute our ideas because if we are being commissioned to drive a very specific mandate and a specific task, I would rather fail on our own merits. And like, you're paying us to do a very specific job. If you want us here at the table, this is what we're going to do. The CEO moved that creative director out the way. We executed and we did it very successfully. If it had
Sometimes
gone
people
wrong, we were accountable and we'd have lost the client. Like, I'd rather that happen.
I came across agencies that were so confident in their model that they actually put their own money into it. They said, we will take less overall money, but take a 20% commission on making this work.
Sales.
Yeah.
So that works in performance worlds a lot. Like, hey, we're so confident. It works in like sales attributable sort of, but if you're going, it depends on the goal, right? It depends on the goal. But yeah, I think that's smart. Back yourself. And there's a psychological sell through of like, oh, if we're going to put we've got skin in the game. That's a pact.
Yeah.
That gives me confidence that you're the right partner for me. If you're
Exactly.
willing to take that
Long-term
step.
partners. They're really into it. They're not just going to chop and change when it's
we're not we're not as transactional. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
Fellas, I need to bounce to a meeting, but as always, fun. We covered a hell of a lot there. I'll see you for next session we're gonna do
even more, eh, Ben?
no, next session we're gonna Ben's doing an expose. No, I'm joking. Ben's not doing expose. We're gonna do predictions, I think. I think that's
predictions. Spotify wrap up. Let's do the wrap up.
We'll do tinfoil hats. In fact, we're not going to call them predictions. We'll call them conspiracy theories. I think we just go wild and unhinged. Not predictions, conspiracies. That will do. Anyway, gents, speak soon.
Bye.